Some of the world's most brilliant architects remain completely anonymous. Their identities have vanished, yet their work endures in cities built with mathematical precision and celestial knowledge that we still cannot fully explain. You will discover how ancient planners achieved engineering marvels that defy logical explanation, from a metropolis aligned with distant stars to an underground city with perfect acoustics. What kind of society could build a perfect grid city 4,000 years ago, and why did they leave no written plans behind? By the end, you will understand why these urban puzzles force us to reconsider the very timeline of human innovation. What does it truly mean for a civilization to be advanced? Archaeologists have stood before these colossal structures for generations, their notebooks overflowing with precise measurements that stubbornly refuse to reveal a master plan. The mystery of an undercoded city is never just one puzzle. It is a series of interlocking enigmas, each layer more baffling than the last. It begins with the stones themselves, quarried from sources dozens of miles away and transported by methods we can only guess at. Then come the alignments, where entire avenues and monuments are positioned not toward traffic flow or water sources, but toward the solstice sun or a specific star cluster. The final, most profound layer is the silent culture, a society that invested generations in a monumental project yet left behind no written manuals, no royal decrees explaining their purpose. This stands in stark contrast to the logic of our own cities. Modern urban planning follows a clear calculus of efficiency. We lay out grids for easy navigation, place infrastructure to manage waste and water, and zone areas for living and commerce based on resource distribution. But these ancient architects seem to follow a different set of rules entirely. For them, a perfect sacred geometry or a precise astronomical alignment appears to have been more important than any practical, day-to-day concern. The central question then shifts from a simple how to a much deeper why. Why arrange an entire metropolis into a perfect grid 4,000 years ago when such a concept was supposedly unknown? Why build a city underground with a ventilation system so advanced it would not be rivaled for millennia? The answer might lie in a fundamentally different way of seeing the world. We analyze our environment through a lens of physics and economics. They may have perceived a universe woven together by invisible spiritual threads, where the placement of a building could harmonize earthly life with cosmic order. Their blueprint was not just for streets and walls, but for the soul itself. This is the permanent challenge these silent cities pose to us. They are not just ruins. They are a question carved in stone, asking if we have overlooked an entire dimension of what it means to be an advanced civilization. The sheer scale of this celestial ambition becomes overwhelming when you walk the Avenue of the Dead. Your feet tread a path that is far more than a simple roadway. It is a terrestrial map of the heavens. The colossal pyramid of the sun does not face true north. Instead, it is offset by 15.5 degrees, a deliberate and precise orientation that allowed its builders to track the cyclical movements of the Pleiades star cluster across the night sky. This was not a solitary alignment. The entire city, from the placement of its most minor platform to the grand sweep of its central avenue, corresponds with solar cycles, planetary movements, and even the slow, grand wobble of the Earth's axis, known as the precession of the equinoxes. This accuracy would be a formidable challenge for modern surveyors with their laser technology and satellite data. For an ancient people working with rudimentary tools, it seems almost impossible. The most breathtaking theory suggests the city itself is a scale model of our solar system. key structures are positioned at relative distances that mirror the orbits of planets around our Sun. This means the architects did not just observe the stars, they understood cosmic mechanics on a level that allowed them to embed its fundamental principles into the very Earth. Who were these master planners? We do not know their name, their language, or why their magnificent city was eventually abandoned. Their identity has been completely erased by time. Yet their celestial blueprint remains, a complex machine of stone and alignment that continues to function with a silent, mathematical perfection, waiting for us to finally comprehend its original instructions. While the architects of Teotihuacan mapped the heavens, another civilization on the opposite side of the world perfected the earth beneath their feet. In the Indus Valley, a city called Mohenjo-Daro presents a mystery of a different kind, one of stunning practicality and silent social order. Its streets are not aligned with stars but with the cardinal directions, laid out in a perfect grid that would not become common again for thousands of years. Every brick in the city is standardized to a uniform ratio, a level of industrial coordination that feels eerily modern. But the true genius of its anonymous planners lies beneath the surface. A sophisticated drainage network ran throughout the city, with covered channels and outlets that funneled waste away from homes and public spaces. This was the world's first known urban sanitation system, a feat of hydraulic engineering that would not be rivaled until the Roman era, millennia later. The entire city was an intricate machine for healthy living, a testament to a civilization that placed public welfare at the very core of its design. This raises a profound and puzzling question. What kind of society could achieve such perfect urban harmony without leaving behind any trace of a king, an emperor, or even a central palace? There are no grand monuments to powerful rulers here, no great temples proclaiming the dominance of a state religion. The city's most impressive structure is the Great Bath, a massive, watertight public pool built with precisely fitted bricks and a complex system of drains and inlets. Its construction reveals an advanced understanding of hydraulic principles that seems to have emerged fully formed, without any apparent evolutionary precursors. Who were the authorities that commanded such unified effort? How did they maintain order and direct this colossal project without the visible symbols of hierarchical control we associate with ancient power? This civilization mastered urban planning so thoroughly that they created a prototype for the modern city, and then they simply vanished, leaving behind their perfectly engineered streets and a silence more baffling than any inscription. Across the ocean, another civilization was charting the cosmos not with stone, but with earth and timber. In the fertile Mississippi River Valley around the year 1050, a city of staggering scale rose from the floodplains. Cahokia was a metropolis of earth, its skyline defined not by pyramids but by more than 120 hand-built mounds arranged across the landscape with a purpose we are only beginning to grasp. These were not random piles of dirt. Archaeologists have discovered that the mounds form precise geometric shapes, including massive circles and sprawling plazas, all oriented to the cardinal directions with an accuracy that rivals modern engineering. The city's central axis, a line running through the Grand Monk's Mound and the main plaza, aligns perfectly with the sun's position during the equinoxes. This was a city planned by celestial architects. Their most ingenious tool was the woodhenge, a great circle of towering cedar posts that functioned as a colossal solar calendar. On the morning of the spring equinox, a priest or astronomer standing at the circle's center would see the sun rise directly over a specific key post, marking the change of season with absolute precision. This allowed them to synchronize their entire agricultural and ceremonial year. The Grand Plaza itself, a vast open space covering nearly 50 acres, could hold tens of thousands of people for rituals timed to these cosmic events. The sheer coordination required for such massive public works points to a society of immense social complexity and shared knowledge. Perhaps the most baffling clue is the unit of measurement they used. Analysis of the mound placements reveals they were laid out using a standard measuring rod equivalent to our modern foot and inch. This suggests the Cahokian planners possessed a formal, standardized system of mathematics, a concept we did not believe existed in North America at that time. They built a city of celestial harmony and geometric perfection, a thriving urban center that was, for its time, larger than London, and then, by the mid-1400s, it was completely abandoned. The people simply vanished, leaving their magnificent earthworks behind. The silence they left is as profound as their constructions. What happened to the master planners who understood the stars and the soil with such intimacy? What crucial knowledge of the cosmos and community was lost when the great mounds of Cahokia fell silent? Yet across the vast Pacific Ocean, a different kind of architectural defiance rises from the water. Madol is a city that should not exist. Built upon 92 artificial islands, its foundations are a labyrinth of canals resting atop a coral reef. The sheer scale of its construction is staggering, composed of an estimated 750,000 metric tons of basalt rock. Its builders did not use simple field stones. They quarried countless prismatic columns, each a geometric log of volcanic rock weighing up to 50 tons, and transported them from the opposite side of the island. They accomplished this without wheels, without pulleys, and without any metal tools. The precision is as baffling as the power required. These colossal basalt logs were stacked like Lincoln logs, interlocking to form towering walls that have withstood centuries of typhoons and tidal surges, all without a single drop of mortar. How do you move a 50-ton stone column for miles without a wheel? How do you then lift it 20 feet into the air and slot it perfectly into a growing wall? Local oral histories do not speak of engineering, but of magic. They tell of two sorcerer brothers who flew the stones through the air, commanding them to settle into their designated places. For modern archaeologists, the reality is a puzzle with no clear solution. Experiments using replica rafts and hundreds of people have proven dangerously difficult and wildly inefficient. The city's layout adds another layer of mystery. The canals form a rigid geometric grid, but this is not a simple street plan. Key walls and channels are aligned with the rising and setting of the sun and moon during solstices and equinoxes, weaving celestial timekeeping directly into the city's stone fabric. This was a planned ritual center, a sacred administrative capital that appeared suddenly around the year 1200. Then, after 300 years of occupation, it was just as suddenly abandoned. The motivation for building this Venice of the Pacific vanished as completely as the method. What urgent purpose, what profound cultural need could compel a society to undertake such a superhuman labor, only to walk away from it forever? The silent, interlocking stones of Madol offer no answer, only the enduring image of an impossible city. Deep beneath the rolling hills of Cappadocia lies a city carved not from stone but into it. This is Derinkuyu, an underground metropolis of breathtaking complexity that plunges 18 stories into the earth. Its architects designed a labyrinthine world capable of sheltering up to 20,000 people, complete with living quarters, storerooms, wineries, and even churches. The air within this vast subterranean space never grows stale, thanks to a network of over 50 ventilation shafts that channel fresh air to the very deepest levels. This feat alone would challenge modern engineers, yet the planners of Derinkuyu achieved it over a millennium ago. Their design incorporated a perfect passive air conditioning system, using the natural geothermal properties of the volcanic rock to maintain a constant, comfortable temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. But the true genius of this hidden city is not just in its breathability or its climate control. Stand in one of its central shafts and whisper, and your voice will travel with impossible clarity to another level entirely. The architects engineered the soft rock to carry sound, creating a natural intercom system that allowed for communication across the vast, dark expanse. This was a city built for survival. Its defenses were as sophisticated as its living quarters. At the first sign of danger, inhabitants could seal themselves off from the world above by rolling massive, circular stone doors across the entrances. These monolithic discs, each weighing half a ton, slid into place from the inside, creating an impenetrable barrier. They dug their own protected water wells, sinking them so deep that they could not be poisoned from the surface. And they carved secret, miles-long tunnels that connected Derinkuyu to a dozen other underground cities, creating a vast, hidden network of escape routes. Who were these master planners who thought of everything? They anticipated the need for long-term habitation, for security, for communication, and for spiritual solace deep underground. They created a blueprint for survival so perfect that it remains functionally flawless centuries after its abandonment. Their identity, however, is as buried as their city, leaving us only with the silent, echoing halls of their greatest achievement. That same celestial obsession found a different expression deep in the Maya rainforest. The city of Caracol was not just built under the stars, it was built for them. Its planners wove the movements of Venus, the moon, and the sun directly into the city's stone skeleton. A causeway does not simply lead to a temple. It points precisely to the spot on the horizon where the sun rises on the summer solstice. A pyramid is not merely a royal tomb. Its corners are aligned to capture the extreme positions of the moon during its 18.6-year cycle. The entire urban sprawl functioned as a colossal, immovable observatory, a machine of stone designed to track time itself. The centerpiece of this cosmic machine is the pyramid known as Kana. Its grand staircase and central axis are aligned with such precision that on the equinoxes, the sun's ascent creates a play of light and shadow that perfectly bisects the structure. This was no accident. It was a deliberate demonstration of the architect's power to harmonize human construction with the fundamental rhythms of the cosmos. This knowledge appears to have arrived with stunning suddenness. Around the year 650, Caracol transformed from a modest town into a sprawling metropolis supporting over 150,000 people. Its urban plan exploded outwards, with residential groups meticulously arranged across the landscape in patterns that mirror the Maya conception of the universe. This was an urban revolution orchestrated by master astronomers who thought in cycles of time spanning centuries. They achieved alignments accurate to within a fraction of a single degree using nothing but naked eye observations, complex mathematics, and generations of meticulous record-keeping. They mapped the heavens with their city, and in doing so, they left behind a permanent puzzle. What catalyzed this explosive fusion of cosmology and urban design? Why did a society pour its collective genius into building a city that was, in its essence, a clock for the gods? Modern astronomers still study Caracol not for its artifacts, but for its alignments, finding in its silent stones a sophistication we are only beginning to measure. High on the Zimbabwean plateau, an empire of stone defies simple explanation. Its walls curve and ripple across the landscape, built without a single drop of mortar. This is Great Zimbabwe, a city constructed entirely through the dry stone method, where every granite block was so perfectly shaped and fitted that the structures have stood for centuries. The architects used only the materials they found locally, splitting the native granite into millions of flat stones. The result is not a fortress of rigid angles, but a city of graceful, flowing curves. Walls run for nearly 800 feet, tracing elegant ellipses that seem to grow naturally from the hilltops. Within these walls stand mysterious conical towers, solid structures of stone whose true purpose has been completely lost to time. Was it a grain silo, a symbolic representation of power, or an altar to forgotten gods? No one can say for certain. The city's layout reveals a mind that blended the practical with the profoundly symbolic. The hill complex perched high above likely served as a spiritual center and the residence of the king. Below, in the valley enclosures, the everyday citizens lived and worked. This separation suggests a society deeply aware of social hierarchy, physically mapping its structure onto the very land. But the masterpiece of this anonymous planning is the Great Enclosure. Its massive, elliptical wall contains a labyrinth of smaller walls, mysterious monoliths, and a narrow, parallel passageway that forces anyone walking through it into a slow, single-file procession. This was clearly designed for ritual, a physical path meant to alter your state of mind before you reached whatever sacred space lay at its end. What knowledge allowed these builders to achieve such perfect structural integrity and symbolic depth simultaneously? They left no written records, no lists of kings, no explanations for their choices. The mathematical principles required to create these lasting curves and stable, free-standing walls were passed down through generations of craftsmen, a living, breathing knowledge that vanished when the city was abandoned. For centuries, European explorers who stumbled upon these ruins refused to believe they were of African origin, inventing fanciful tales of Phoenician or Arabian builders. They could not conceive that a local civilization had achieved this level of architectural sophistication. But the stone does not lie. Great Zimbabwe stands as a permanent monument to a lost African empire, its silent, curving walls a testament to planners who understood that a city must be more than just a place to live. It must be a physical prayer, a map of the cosmos, and a mirror of the society it shelters, all woven together in stone, while the Maya charted the heavens and the Khmer mastered the earth. In the dense jungles of Cambodia, the sprawling metropolis of Angkor achieved something perhaps even more profound, a perfect fusion of spiritual symbolism and hydraulic engineering on a scale the world had never seen. This was not merely a city with temples, it was a machine for living designed around the sacred, life-giving pulse of water. The entire urban landscape, covering nearly 1,000 square kilometers, was planned with one central, unifying purpose: to capture, store, and distribute every precious drop of monsoon rain. At the heart of this system were the barrays, colossal man-made reservoirs so vast they were essentially inland seas. The largest of these, the West Barray, is an 8-kilometer-long, 2-kilometer-wide expanse of water, containing over 50 million cubic meters of water. Its construction required a level of earth-moving and hydrological calculation that rivals modern civil engineering projects. But these reservoirs were far more than just practical storage. They were central to the Khmer worldview. Each barray represented the cosmic ocean, and at their center, the kings built temple mountains like Angkor Wat itself. These towering stone structures were precise architectural models of Mount Meru, the mythical home of the gods in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. The entire city was a physical map of the universe, where water was the divine element connecting heaven and earth. The genius of the anonymous Khmer architects lay in how they integrated this grand symbolism with gritty, practical necessity. A complex network of canals and channels, laid out with astonishing geometric precision, distributed water from the barrays across the entire metropolitan area. This system did more than just prevent floods and drought. It supported an intensive agriculture that could feed a population approaching 1 million people, a number unmatched by any other pre-industrial city on Earth. The canals also served as transportation arteries, linking the urban core with distant suburbs and satellite temples, creating a cohesive, functioning megalopolis in the middle of the jungle. For centuries, we could only see fragments of this grand design, the most prominent temples poking through the canopy. But recent LiDAR technology has peeled back the forest floor to reveal the true extent of their planning. The scans show a previously invisible city, a sprawling grid of canals, roads, and residential mounds arranged in perfect geometric formations. We can now see that what we thought were isolated temples were actually nodes in a vast, planned urban network. This discovery raises an awe-inspiring question. What kind of knowledge and organizational power allowed these planners to coordinate such a monumental project, not just for a single lifetime, but across centuries of continuous construction and expansion? They managed a workforce of thousands, directed the quarrying and transport of millions of tons of stone, and engineered a water system of breathtaking complexity, all while ensuring every element served a dual purpose, both practical and spiritual. Theirs was an integrated vision we are only now, in an age of environmental crisis, beginning to fully appreciate and desperately try to emulate. They understood that a city is not just a collection of buildings, but a living organism in delicate balance with the natural world, a lesson written in water and stone, waiting centuries for us to finally read. These masons worked with stone as if it were clay. High above the Inca capital of Cusco, the fortress of Sacsayhuamán rises with a geometry that defies both time and tectonics. Its most famous walls are composed of colossal limestone blocks, some weighing 200 tons, each one a unique, irregular polygon. They fit together in a sprawling, zigzag pattern, a jigsaw puzzle carved on an unimaginable scale. The precision is not merely visual. You cannot force the blade of a razor between these stones. They are locked together with such intimate contact that the entire wall moves as one single, resilient unit during an earthquake. This was not just construction, it was a form of alchemy, transforming rigid rock into a flexible, living structure. The architects understood something modern engineers are still striving to master, that a wall built with perfectly interlocking, irregular blocks will sway and settle during a seismic event, whereas a rigid, mortared wall will simply shatter. Their polygonal masonry is a perfect shock absorption system carved in stone, but the how of this achievement is a mystery that deepens with every examination. The quarries for this andesite stone were located over 20 miles away across rugged mountain terrain. How did they transport a 200-ton block, a mass equivalent to 300 cars, up and down steep valleys without the wheel or draft animals? The local legend speaks of a magical plant whose juice could soften stone, allowing the masons to mold it like putty. While we dismiss the folktale, the alternative is scarcely less incredible. They must have possessed a profound, almost intuitive knowledge of stone fracturing, knowing exactly where to tap with their simple stone hammers to split a block along a perfect, complex plane. Even more baffling is the final fitting. Each stone was uniquely shaped to match its neighbors with micrometer precision. How did they achieve this without modern measuring tools, without even a written language to record their calculations? They left no blueprints, only the finished work, a testament to a knowledge system that was entirely hands-on, passed directly from master to apprentice through practice and touch. The fortress itself is more than a defensive structure. Its zigzag walls mirror the lightning bolt, a sacred symbol, and align with solar and stellar events. A complex of underground tunnels, aqueducts, and reservoirs lies beneath, suggesting this was a ceremonial center, a water temple, and a fortress all in one. What kind of mind conceives of a single structure that is simultaneously an astronomical calendar, an indestructible bastion, and a hydrological marvel? The Incas did not just build with stone, they conversed with it. Their stonemasonry stands as the ultimate rebuke to our assumptions about primitive technology, a silent, enduring question carved in rock that we still cannot answer. While the Inca transformed mountains into living stone, another civilization was mapping the cosmos with a compass and a ruler. The original round city of Baghdad, founded in the year 762, was conceived not as a random sprawl, but as a perfect geometric diagram of the universe. Its founder, the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mansur, did not merely want a capital. He wanted to build heaven on earth, a physical manifestation of divine order. The city was laid out as an immense circle nearly 2 kilometers across, surrounded by concentric rings of formidable walls. This was a city designed from a single, unified vision, a complete departure from the irregular, organic layouts of earlier settlements. 4 monumental gates pierced the outer walls, each one precisely aligned to a cardinal direction and named for the distant empire its road would lead to, the Khorasan, Kufa, Basra, and Damascus gates. From these gates, straight radial avenues sliced inward like spokes on a colossal wheel, all converging on the absolute center of the city. At this central point stood the caliph's golden domed palace and the adjoining great mosque, a powerful statement that spiritual and worldly authority were the twin pivots around which the entire universe of the city revolved. This was urban planning as a sacred act. The perfect circle was a symbol of unity and perfection in Islamic cosmology, representing the universe created by a single, all-powerful God. The concentric walls mirrored the layered spheres of the heavens described by astronomers and philosophers. Even the mathematical proportions between the city's diameter, the spacing of its walls, and the placement of its key buildings were calculated to reflect harmonic ratios, creating a city that was not just built, but composed, like a piece of cosmic music frozen in brick and marble. The planners employed principles inherited from Persian and Greek geometry, blending them with a distinctly Islamic worldview to create a functioning metropolis that was also a profound philosophical statement. For a brief, glorious period, the city operated exactly as intended, a microcosm of a perfectly ordered society. But this geometric purity was fragile. The very success of Baghdad as a center of world trade and culture doomed its original form. Sprawling suburbs burst beyond the perfect circular walls, spilling out in an unplanned, chaotic, but vibrant urban explosion. The radial streets designed for ceremonial processions and symbolic order proved inefficient for the messy, bustling needs of 1 million inhabitants. Within a few centuries, the perfect circle was swallowed by the organic growth of the real world. The original round city survives now only in historical descriptions and archaeological fragments. Its loss is more than just the fading of an ancient urban plan. It represents the vanishing of a specific, holistic knowledge, a way of thinking where a city's primary purpose was to embody a cosmic truth. We are left to wonder what other secrets of sacred geometry and symbolic function were woven into its concentric rings, secrets that were lost when the perfect circle was broken. The stonework of Machu Picchu does not conquer the mountain, it converses with it. Perched on a knife-edge ridge high in the Andes, this city of terraces and temples was not imposed upon the landscape, but woven into its very fabric. The anonymous Inca architects who planned this sanctuary in the 15th century displayed a genius for integration that modern engineering is only now starting to decode. Their primary tool for taming the steep, unstable slopes was the terrace. They constructed over 700 of these stone-walled platforms, but these were far more than simple flat spaces for farming. Each terrace was a complex, multi-layered construction. The builders began with a foundation of heavy stones for drainage, followed by a layer of smaller rocks, then gravel, sand, and finally rich topsoil. This created a giant sponge, allowing rainwater to percolate downward without washing the precious soil away. An intricate network of channels and drains, carved directly into the stone, still directs water through the entire city with perfect efficiency, 5 centuries after its abandonment. The city itself is a celestial instrument. Its most sacred structures are precisely aligned with the movements of the sun. During the June solstice, the sun rises directly through a specific window of the Temple of the Sun, casting a blade of light onto a ceremonial stone within. At the city's highest point sits the Teotihuacan stone, an intricately carved granite pillar whose angles and planes are calibrated to track the sun's progression throughout the year. It was literally a stone for tying the sun, a device to hold the celestial body in its course. But perhaps the most profound innovation is invisible until the ground begins to shake. Like at Sacsayhuaman, every structure in Machu Picchu was built using precisely cut, mortarless stonework. The walls are composed of stones that lock together in a complex jigsaw puzzle. During an earthquake, these stones are designed to dance. They shift and sway against each other, dissipating the seismic energy. And then, as the tremors subside, they settle perfectly back into their original positions. Modern rigid construction would crack and crumble, but these ancient walls simply breathe with the mountain. This raises a question that resonates deeply today. What kind of knowledge system allowed these planners to achieve such a perfect synthesis of geology, hydrology, and astronomy? They did not see the mountain as an obstacle to be flattened, but as a partner in their design. Their entire architectural philosophy was one of integration rather than domination. They listened to the land, understood its rhythms and its weaknesses, and built in a way that enhanced the mountain's stability rather than compromising it. In an age where we struggle with environmental crises born from our attempts to control nature, the silent, terraced city offers a powerful lesson. It stands as a testament to a civilization that measured its advancement not by its power to reshape the world, but by its wisdom to build in harmony with it. This concept of building with the land finds its ultimate expression not in grand monuments, but in a city carved directly into the living rock. The ancient settlement of Matera in southern Italy presents a different kind of mystery, one not of abrupt abandonment but of incredible endurance. Generations of its inhabitants have lived in the very same caves for over 9,000 years, making it one of the longest continuously inhabited places on Earth. Its first architects were Neolithic families who saw the potential in the soft limestone cliffs. They did not construct walls, they revealed rooms. They did not build a city upon the earth, they wove it into the earth's very fabric. The result is the Sassi di Matera, a breathtaking district where houses, churches, and streets are all carved from the calcarenite stone, a labyrinthine world that grew organically from the landscape over countless centuries. These original planners possessed a deep, intuitive understanding of geology. They knew how to carve dwellings that were structurally stable, with vaulted ceilings that distributed weight perfectly. They harnessed the natural properties of the stone itself, which acted as a thermal mass, keeping the caves cool in the scorching summer and remarkably warm during the cold winter. This was passive climate control engineered millennia before the term even existed, but their true genius lay in managing the most precious resource in a dry landscape, water. They engineered a complex system of channels and cisterns that captured every drop of rainwater from the cliff tops. These cisterns, some large enough to be underground reservoirs, were carved deep into the bedrock, keeping the water cool and clean. Narrow channels called grappogi directed water from one cistern to another, creating a neighborhood-wide network that sustained the community. They even designed their streets to function as part of this system, with gutters that funneled runoff into the communal tanks. This was a city that drank from the sky, a self-sufficient hydrological machine carved in stone. How did a society with no written plans achieve such a perfect, sustainable model for urban living? The city evolved not from a single master blueprint, but from a collective wisdom passed from parent to child, a continuous conversation with the environment. Each new generation added to the work of the last, deepening a cistern here, carving a new room there, always following the same principles of adaptation and respect for the stone. This created an urban continuity that is virtually unmatched in human history. The cave dwellings, often multi-leveled with the stable for animals on the bottom and the family living above, were not just shelters. They were a perfect symbiotic unit, where the body heat from the animals helped warm the human quarters. Communal courtyards and underground churches became the social and spiritual heart of this vertical community. What ancient knowledge about living in balance with the earth allowed these architects to create a city that remained functionally perfect for so many centuries? In an age of disposable construction and fleeting urban trends, the silent, enduring stones of Matara ask us a profound question. Have we, in our rush to dominate our environment, forgotten the fundamental wisdom of building with it? The blueprint for the modern metropolis was first laid out in the sand along the Egyptian coast. When Alexander the Great chose the site for his new capital in 331 BCE, he entrusted its design to the architect Derinkuyu. The vision that emerged was revolutionary, a city of unparalleled order and harmony laid out in a perfect grid. Two colossal main streets, each 30 meters wide, crossed at the city's heart, creating a vast, open public square. These were not mere pathways but grand ceremonial avenues designed for processions and commerce, slicing the urban landscape into orderly blocks. For the first time in history, a major city was planned from the ground up with geometric precision, establishing a template of rational organization that would echo through the centuries. This was more than just efficient layout, it was philosophy made manifest in stone. Derinkuyu and his colleagues were deeply influenced by the ideas of Aristotle, who championed the city as the pinnacle of human society, a place where order and beauty should foster virtuous living. Every element of Alexandria served a deliberate purpose. The city was divided into specialized districts, one for the royal palaces, another for Greek citizens, and a third for native Egyptians, a design that managed social structure as carefully as traffic flow. This Hellenistic grid was a masterful synthesis, blending the logical clarity of Greek thought with the monumental scale of Egyptian architecture. The city's most famous structure, the towering lighthouse conceived by the architect Sostratus, was the ultimate symbol of this fusion. It was not just a navigational aid but a triumphant declaration of human reason, a beacon of enlightenment guiding ships into the greatest planned city the world had ever seen. Yet for all its enduring influence, the full genius of its original design remains tantalizingly out of reach. The vibrant, chaotic modern city of Alexandria today sits directly atop its ancient predecessor, burying the first grid under millennia of continuous life. We can trace the outlines of its grand avenues, but we have lost the intimate knowledge of why certain proportions were chosen, how the flow of water and people was calculated, and what subtle philosophical principles were embedded in its geometry. These architects created a system so effective we still use it, yet the profound reasoning behind their original vision has faded into history. Their legacy is our urban world, but their deepest wisdom is a silent echo in the grid lines of our own city streets. Far to the north, in the high desert of what is now New Mexico, the ancestral Puebloan people engineered a ceremonial metropolis that transformed the landscape itself. Chaco Canyon is a symphony in stone, its movements composed of massive great houses, celestial alignments, and a network of arrow-straight roads that defy the rugged terrain. These were not mere trails, they were engineered thoroughfares some 30 feet wide, carved and leveled into the earth, running for hundreds of miles to connect over 150 outlying communities. The purpose of these roads is one of the canyon's deepest puzzles. They show little evidence of everyday travel or trade. Instead, they often run in unnervingly straight lines, plunging directly up cliff faces using carved stairways and continuing on the other side as if the mountain were not even there. This suggests they were not for practical transport, but for ceremonial processions, creating sacred pathways that physically wove a vast region into a single spiritual community. At the heart of this network lies Pueblo Bonito, the canyon's greatest great house. Its semicircular form rises several stories high, containing over 600 rooms arranged in a precise D-shaped pattern. This was not a chaotic village that grew over time. It was a single, planned architectural unit, built in distinct stages that all adhered to the original grand design. The building's alignment is a masterpiece of celestial engineering. Its rear wall runs perfectly north-south, while its front wall aligns east-west. Specific windows and doorways were positioned to capture the sun's rays on the equinoxes, casting blades of light into the building's dark interior to mark the changing seasons. But the most breathtaking alignment involves the moon. A single slab of rock positioned on a mesa top miles away perfectly frames the moon during its minor lunar standstill, an event that occurs only once every 18.6 years. The architects of Chaco did not just observe the sky, they integrated its most complex cycles into the very bones of their city. How did they achieve such precision without written records or metal tools? Their genius was in using the landscape itself as their surveying instrument. They used natural features like distant buttes and pinnacles as permanent sighting points, lining up their walls and roads with these fixed markers to create a giant, open-air observatory. The entire canyon was their blueprint. This reveals a society with a shared, deep knowledge of mathematics, geometry, and astronomy, a knowledge so advanced it allowed them to coordinate construction across generations and across hundreds of miles of desert. Then, around the year 1150, the great houses fell silent. The careful maintenance of the road ceased, and the canyon was abandoned. A prolonged drought is the most common explanation, but this does not fully account for the completeness of the departure. Why would a culture with such profound engineering skill and spiritual cohesion simply walk away from its greatest achievement? The silent, sun-baked stones of Chaco Canyon hold their secret, a permanent monument to a vision of community and cosmos that we can only partially perceive. The desert demands one simple price for survival, and the Nabateans paid it in flawless engineering. Petra is a city that should have died of thirst, yet its planners saw the arid landscape not as a barrier but as a catchment area. They designed a hydraulic masterpiece that turned flash floods from a destructive force into their lifeblood. A network of over 200 cisterns was carved directly into the solid rock, some large enough to hold thousands of gallons. These were not simple holes in the ground. They were lined with a special waterproof plaster that prevented seepage, ensuring that every drop of precious rainwater was preserved. But the true genius lies in the channels. The Nabateans carved narrow, carefully graded conduits along the canyon walls, directing water from miles away into the city center. These channels are so precisely sloped that they maintain a constant, gentle flow, fast enough to prevent stagnation but slow enough to avoid erosion. They even installed settling tanks to filter out silt and debris, ensuring the water entering the city was clean. The result was an artificial oasis of stunning reliability. Public fountains bubbled in the main streets, and private homes enjoyed running water, a level of urban luxury that would not be seen again in the region for 2,000 years. This mastery of desert hydrology raises a haunting question. How did a civilization with no formal scientific training as we know it develop such an intimate, almost intuitive understanding of their environment? They read the desert like a book, predicting the paths of rare rainstorms and calculating water flow with an accuracy that still impresses modern engineers. Their most famous structures, like the treasury, are feats of subtractive architecture. They did not build upwards but carved downwards, starting at the top of the cliff and working their way to the ground, removing an estimated 400,000 tons of rock to create a single facade. This method required a vision that could see the finished building hidden within the living stone, a plan so complete that no corrections were possible once the work began. The classical columns and intricate statues adorning these tombs were not added on but revealed from the solid rock itself. This was a society that thought in centuries, not seasons. So why did this profound knowledge vanish? When the Roman Empire absorbed Petra, they valued the city as a trade hub, but they failed to maintain the delicate, intricate water system. The Romans were masters of aqueducts, bringing water from distant sources, but they did not possess the Nabatean art of harvesting every drop from the immediate environment. The sophisticated channels slowly clogged with silt, the cisterns cracked, and the desert reclaimed its throne. The very expertise that allowed Petra to flourish was a localized, specialized knowledge passed down through generations of craftsmen. Once that chain was broken, the wisdom was lost. Today, as many regions face severe water scarcity, the silent, carved channels of Petra stand as a stark reminder. We search for high-tech solutions, while an ancient civilization once possessed the low-tech, sustainable answer, a blueprint for life in the desert that we are only now struggling to rediscover. This precise geometry was not merely decorative, it was a direct translation of a heavenly ideal into urban form. At the heart of 17th century Isfahan lay the Naksh-i-Jahan Square, a vast rectangular plaza that served as the city's spiritual and social nucleus. Its proportions were not arbitrary. The length of the square was precisely twice its width, a ratio that created a sense of perfect balance and harmony, mirroring the celestial order described in Islamic philosophy. Flanking this immense space were four monumental structures, each representing a pillar of society. The Shah Mosque stood for religious devotion, the Ali Kapu Palace for royal authority, and the Grand Bazaar for commercial prosperity, all linked by a continuous arcade that unified them into a single, cohesive whole. You did not just walk through this square, you experienced a physical manifestation of a perfectly ordered universe. The architects extended this symbolic language to the smallest details. Water, the ultimate symbol of life and purity in a desert climate, was channeled through the city in precise, geometric rills and pools. These were not just canals, they were earthly representations of the four rivers of paradise described in the Quran. Lush gardens divided into four symmetrical sections by these waterways recreated the Islamic vision of heaven itself. Every element, from the grand iwan of a mosque to the pattern of a single tile, was part of a cosmic language written in brick, glaze, and flowing water. This integration of profound symbolism with flawless function is what makes Isfahan so revolutionary. The Grand Bazaar was not hidden away, it was a central artery of daily life. its bustling commerce framed by the serene domes of the mosque, suggesting that spiritual and material pursuits could coexist in harmony. The palaces were designed with music rooms and elevated terraces that captured the cool wind, proving that aesthetic beauty and practical comfort were two sides of the same coin. What guided these Persian planners was a holistic worldview where the divine was not separate from the mundane, but woven through it. They understood that the shape of a city could shape the human soul, that walking through a geometrically perfect space could instill a sense of peace and order in its inhabitants. Their genius was in translating abstract spiritual concepts into a living, breathing urban environment, creating a city that was not just a place to live, but a pathway to a higher state of being. In our modern cities, where function so often brutally overrules form and soul, the silent, harmonious stones of Isfahan ask us what we have sacrificed in our pursuit of pure efficiency. Deep within the Guatemalan rainforest, the stone temples of Tikal pierce the canopy like stone mountains. This was not just a city of kings, but a living calendar carved from limestone, where every towering pyramid and sprawling plaza was a cog in a celestial machine. The architects of Tikal designed their metropolis to breathe in time with the cosmos. They tracked the complex 584-day cycle of Venus with such precision that specific temples were positioned to mark its first appearance as the evening star. Other structures were aligned to capture the sun on its zenith passage, the 2 days each year when the sun stands directly overhead at noon and vertical objects cast no shadow. In these moments, a blade of light would fall through a precisely angled doorway or across a carved marker, turning the entire city into a giant sundial announcing a sacred date. This urban cosmology was woven into the very layout of the city. The Grand Plaza, flanked by Temple 1 and Temple 2, forms a perfect north-south axis, a monumental baseline from which all other measurements seem to flow. Causeways stretch for miles into the jungle, connecting the urban core with outlying districts in straight lines that defy the rugged terrain, much like the ceremonial roads of Choco Canyon. These were not mere roads, but processional ways and astronomical sightlines. The residences of the elite and the commoners were not randomly scattered. They clustered around the ceremonial centers in distinct patterns, their placement a physical map of the society's hierarchy, with the king's palace and the most sacred temples at the cosmological center. The true genius of Tikal's planners is revealed in their persistence. This was not a single construction project, but an 800-year endeavor. Generation after generation of architects adhered to the original cosmic blueprint, layering new temples over old foundations, always maintaining the precise astronomical alignments. They achieved this without any written blueprints or engineering manuals that we have ever found. Their knowledge was a living tradition, passed down through a priestly class who possessed a mathematics sophisticated enough to conceptualize the number 0 and calculate celestial cycles across centuries. How did they maintain this accuracy over so many generations? Through rises and falls of dynasties. The city itself was their permanent record. Each new structure was surveyed from the fixed points of the old, creating an unbroken chain of celestial observation locked in stone. We are only beginning to decode the full depth of their achievement, finding that what we once saw as isolated pyramids were actually interconnected components in the Maya's grandest calculation, a machine built not to tell the time of day, but to harmonize an entire civilization with the eternal rhythm of the universe. High on the Ethiopian plateau, an entire city of faith was not built but revealed. The rock-hewn churches of Lalibela stand as a testament to a vision so powerful it commanded the very mountains to open. In the 12th and 13th centuries, King Jeba Meskel Lalibela ordered the creation of a new Jerusalem, a symbolic holy land for African pilgrims barred by conflict from reaching the original. What emerged from the red volcanic rock was not a collection of buildings, but 11 monolithic churches, each one a single, continuous piece of stone, carved from the top down in a breathtaking feat of subtractive architecture. The architects did not add stone, they removed everything that was not a church. This meant envisioning the final, intricate form, the roofs, walls, windows, and interior columns, while still standing on solid ground above it. One misjudgment, one overzealous strike, and the entire project could be ruined. The most iconic of these, the Church of St. George, is a perfect cross shape, a 3-story tall masterpiece that appears to be a giant cruciform tower sunk into a deep pit. The precision of its geometry, carved from a single block, is humbling. How did they plan such a complex 3-dimensional structure in reverse, knowing exactly how deep to carve before they had even entered the main worship space? The answer remains locked in the stone itself. Their methods were as ingenious as their vision. Workers would first carve a deep, wide trench around a massive block of bedrock, isolating it. Then, like master sculptors, they would begin the painstaking work of hollowing out the interior, creating naves, altars, and arched ceilings, all while carving the exterior walls and decorative features. They engineered a complex network of drainage channels and aqueducts to divert rainwater, protecting the soft rock from erosion. They even carved a labyrinth of tunnels and ceremonial passages connecting the churches, allowing priests to move between them unseen, recreating the spiritual journey through the Holy Land. The entire complex is laid out on a symbolic east-west axis, representing the path of Christ's life, with different church groupings symbolizing an earthly and a heavenly Jerusalem. Certain windows and doors are aligned to catch the first rays of the sun on specific feast days, weaving the liturgical calendar directly into the architecture. The sheer ambition is staggering. With only hammers, chisels, and an untold number of human hands, they achieved a level of architectural integration that modern engineers would struggle to replicate without powered machinery. This was not merely construction, it was an act of devotion so profound that it physically altered the landscape. What kind of faith, what depth of collective knowledge could orchestrate such a miracle in stone? The churches of Lalibela do not simply stand as monuments. They are a permanent prayer, a city born from a mountain, asking us what is truly possible when human spirit and earthly material become one. Harappa rises from the same ancient soil, a sister city echoing Mohenjo-Daro's genius across hundreds of miles. Its planners worked from the same invisible blueprint, laying out a near-identical grid of streets aligned to the cardinal directions and constructing a commanding citadel mound overlooking a sprawling lower town. Every brick in Harappa confirms the astonishing reach of this civilization's standards. They used the same uniform ratio, 1:2:4, baking each brick to a consistent durability that has survived millennia. This was not a coincidence, it was a system, a continent-spanning agreement on how to build a city, enforced with a quality control that feels industrial. The sheer volume of these identical bricks points to a centralized authority capable of coordinating production on an almost unimaginable scale, who held the master plan that guided the hands of builders in 2 major cities so far apart. The granaries at Harappa offer a clue to their logistical mind. These were not simple storage pits but massive, raised platforms designed with strategic air ducts. This sophisticated ventilation system protected vast grain reserves from rot and pests, enabling the city to weather droughts and feed a vast population. It was food security engineered 4,000 years ago. Yet, for all this evidence of centralized planning, the rulers themselves remain utterly invisible. The cemetery at Harappa reveals a society where individuals were buried with simple, utilitarian goods, with little of the extravagant wealth that usually shouts of kings and pharaohs. There is no grand tomb, no palace screaming of a supreme leader. This profound uniformity in death, mirroring the uniformity of the cities in life, deepens the central mystery. How did they maintain such flawless consistency across their entire civilization, without the symbols of coercive power we see everywhere else in the ancient world? What shared belief or common knowledge compelled every bricklayer, from the Indus to the Gagga-Hakra River, to follow the exact same rules? Their architectural traditions achieved a peak of urban perfection, and then they vanished, leaving behind these silent, orderly ruins. We can measure their bricks and map their streets, but the social engine that powered this unprecedented coordination has been completely lost to time. Machu Picchu's true purpose is a debate carved into its very stones. Why place a city of such grandeur on a remote mountain ridge, accessible only by a grueling climb? Some see a royal estate, a secluded retreat for Inca nobility. Others argue it was a sacred religious center, a destination for pilgrims drawn to its sky-high sanctity. Its design offers the most compelling clues. The city is cleanly divided into distinct sectors, a masterclass in functional zoning. The agricultural terraces cascade down the mountainside, more than 700 layers of engineered soil that fed the population while preventing erosion. Above them, the residential quarters cluster in an orderly grid, suggesting a structured community. And at the highest point, separated by open plazas, lies the sacred heart of the city, the Teotihuacan stone and the temples. This was not a haphazard settlement. It was a deliberate, three-part model of Inca society, reflecting a worldview where farming, community, and worship were inseparable strands of a single life. The celestial alignments confirm this spiritual depth. The Temple of the Sun is a masterpiece of solar observation. Its single trapezoidal window is not placed for a view, but for a specific moment. On the June solstice, the first rays of the rising sun stream directly through this opening, striking a ceremonial stone inside with a blade of light. Other structures are oriented to capture the equinox sun or track the Pleiades star cluster. This precision required more than just careful observation. It demanded a sophisticated mathematics, an understanding of angles and cycles that allowed the architects to freeze celestial time in granite. But perhaps their most profound knowledge was geological. Every wall in Machu Picchu is built using that iconic Inca technique, precisely cut stones fitted together without mortar. This was not just an aesthetic choice, it was a brilliant seismic innovation. When an earthquake strikes, a rigid building shatters, but these interlocking stones are designed to dance. They sway and shift with the tremors, dissipating the energy, and then, as the shaking stops, they settle perfectly back into place. The architects understood the mountain they built upon. They knew its vibrations and its weaknesses, and they designed a city that would move with the land, not against it. So what was this place? A fortress, a temple, a royal garden? Its perfect preservation suggests it was all these things at once, a sanctuary where human life was woven into the fabric of the cosmos, guided by a knowledge of stone and stars that we are still struggling to fully decipher. The Spanish conquistadors who first gazed upon Tenochtitlan saw a city that defied all logic. It was a shimmering vision of white temples and bustling canals, a Venice of the Americas rising from the center of a vast lake. The Aztec architects who built this metropolis on Lake Texcoco began with an impossible foundation, transforming a swampy island into a grid of canals and artificial islands. These were the chinampas, the floating gardens that formed the city's agricultural heart, but they did not truly float. They were long, rectangular plots of incredibly fertile land, constructed by weaving together reeds and stakes, then piling them with mud and vegetation from the lake bottom. This created a permanent, anchored garden bed that could be cultivated year-round, feeding a population that swelled to 200,000 people. The entire city was interconnected by a web of canals, serving as waterways for canoes and efficient arteries for trade and communication. To connect their island capital to the mainland, the engineers constructed 3 massive causeways, each wide enough for 10 horsemen to ride abreast. These were not simple earthen mounds, they were complex feats of hydraulic engineering, pierced by carefully placed gaps that allowed water to circulate freely. These gaps were bridged by wooden sections that could be removed for defense, turning the entire city into a formidable island fortress. The planners faced their greatest challenge in managing the lake itself, a body of water that was a volatile mix of fresh and saline. They constructed a massive dike nearly 10 miles long, running right through the city. This stone levee effectively separated the freshwater springs fed from the surrounding hills from the brackish water of the main lake, creating a stable, drinkable water supply for the urban center. An intricate system of sluice gates allowed engineers to control the water levels, preventing floods during the rainy season and retaining water during dry periods. This mastery over their environment extended to sanitation in ways that would have shocked contemporary Europeans. Public latrines were placed throughout the city, with waste collected in canoes and transported to the chinampas to be used as fertilizer. The streets and canals were kept meticulously clean by dedicated crews, a level of public hygiene unknown in the crowded, filthy cities of 16th century Europe. At the city's sacred core, the grand ceremonial precinct revealed a different kind of planning. The Templo Mayor, the great twin pyramid, was not just aligned to the cardinal directions. Its placement was a precise cosmological map, representing the mythical Snake Mountain of Aztec legend. The entire city was a physical model of the Aztec universe, with the main temples positioned to track the sun and Venus across the sky. How did a civilization without wheeled vehicles or draft animals conceive of and execute such a complex urban vision? The answer lies in a profound, collective understanding of their environment, a knowledge system that viewed engineering, agriculture, and cosmology as inseparable parts of a single harmonious whole. They did not conquer the lake, they partnered with it, creating a metropolis that was both a marvel of utility and a poem written in water and stone. The architects of Cappadocia did not merely carve shelters, they engineered entire worlds beneath the surface, connecting dozens of underground cities through miles of secret tunnels. This hidden network transformed the entire region into a single, massive refuge. Their planning went far beyond simple caves. They identified the specific volcanic rock known as tuff, a soft, workable stone that hardened upon exposure to air, creating a material that was both easy to carve and structurally resilient over centuries. Within this stone, they designed with the foresight of modern urban planners. Residential quarters were stacked in multiple levels, connected by steep staircases and narrow corridors that could be easily blocked by a single defender. Communal spaces like churches and wineries were centrally located, while vast storage chambers were dug into the deepest, most stable zones to hold grain, oil, and wine for thousands of people. The true genius of these anonymous architects, however, lies in the systems that made life possible. They sank ventilation shafts over 100 feet deep, engineering a passive airflow that pulled fresh air down into the lowest chambers while expelling stale air upwards. These shafts were camouflaged at the surface to look like simple wells, hiding the bustling city below from any potential threat. They tapped into underground aquifers, creating secure water sources that could not be poisoned from above. Perhaps most remarkably, they mastered the art of climate control. The dense rock acted as a natural insulator, maintaining a constant temperature of around 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. This created a perfect environment not just for human comfort, but for preserving food and aging wine in the very wineries they carved from the stone. What desperate circumstances drove an entire society underground? Were they hiding from invading armies or seeking refuge from the brutal heat of the Anatolian plains? The technical knowledge required to execute this vision is staggering. These planners possessed a sophisticated understanding of geology, structural engineering, and hydraulics that allowed them to create a self-sufficient, climate-controlled habitat 1,000 years before such concepts entered the mainstream. In an era of rising extreme temperatures and seeking sustainable living solutions, the silent, multi-level cities of Cappadocia stand as a timeless lesson. They are a masterclass in resilience, proving that humanity's greatest innovations often emerge not from conquering our environment, but from learning to live in perfect harmony with it, even when that means building a civilization in the dark. High on the Zimbabwean plateau, the stones themselves seem to whisper a forgotten language. Great Zimbabwe's architectural genius extends far beyond its famous dry stone walls into a realm of profound symbolic meaning that we are only beginning to sense. The city's layout is a physical map of a complex society, its very geography encoding social and spiritual hierarchies. The hill complex perched high above the landscape was more than a royal residence. It was the spiritual nexus, a place where the ruler could commune with the ancestral world, physically elevated above the everyday life of the valley below. This separation was deliberate, a constant, visible reminder of the cosmic order mirrored in the urban plan. The most tantalizing mystery within this stone puzzle is the Great Conical Tower. This solid, towering structure, meticulously built within the great enclosure, has been called a grain silo, a symbolic grain bin, a phallic monument, and an astronomical marker. Yet its true purpose remains locked away, its silent form a permanent question mark. Perhaps its meaning was not functional but symbolic, representing the authority of the king, or serving as a spiritual conduit between the earth and the heavens. The walls themselves are canvases for this symbolic language. The elegant chevron patterns, those zigzag designs running along the tops of certain walls, are not merely decorative. They may represent the path of water, a sacred and vital resource, or even symbolize the sacred python, a creature of immense spiritual significance in local traditions. Every pattern, every strategic break in a wall might have been a word in a larger story. The great enclosure is the masterpiece of this symbolic architecture. Its massive, elliptical wall creates a sacred space separate from the outside world. Inside, a narrow, parallel passageway forces any visitor to walk in a slow, single-file procession. This was clearly designed as a ritual pathway, a physical journey meant to alter one's state of mind, building anticipation and reverence before reaching the inner sanctum where the conical tower stands. The entire experience was choreographed by the architects to produce a specific spiritual and emotional effect. The most profound possibility is that these builders encoded complex knowledge directly into their proportions. The precise curves of the walls, the ratios between different enclosures, and the alignments of key features may have held mathematical principles or recorded historical cycles. Without a Rosetta Stone of their own, we are left measuring the silent geometry, knowing we are likely missing the deeper message. What cultural world you saw a city not just as a place of shelter, but as a living, breathing representation of the universe? The planners of Great Zimbabwe did not simply build with stone. They wove their understanding of community, cosmos, and ancestry into the very fabric of their city. creating a testament in rock that challenges our modern, utilitarian view of what a city was ever meant to be. The same celestial precision that guided pyramid builders found expression in the very streets where they lived. Long before the great temples were oriented to the stars, Egyptian planners were weaving cosmic order into the fabric of their cities. At the workers' town of Cahokia, a planned community for the laborers constructing the pyramid of Senusret II, the layout was a marvel of early orthogonal design. Its main streets ran perfectly north-south and east-west, a rigid grid that echoed the cardinal directions with an accuracy that feels unnervingly modern. This was not a haphazard settlement. It was a deliberate imposition of geometric and cosmic harmony upon the chaos of daily life, a place where even a common laborer's house was aligned with the fundamental axes of the universe. This philosophy reached its zenith in the ceremonial capital of Amarna. Here, the entire city was a sacred instrument. The royal road, the city's central artery, was not merely a path for processions. Its entire length was aligned so that on certain dates, the sun would rise or set in direct relation to its course, turning a simple journey into a celestial event. Major temples and palaces were positioned not just for grandeur, but to capture the sun's rays at solstice moments, bathing their inner sanctuaries in a divine light. The planners achieved this with astonishingly simple tools, likely using nothing more than a sighting rod called a bay and a length of knotted rope. They would have observed the shadow of a central pole over the course of a day, marking the points to establish a true east-west line, then using that to build their perfect right angles. This was a hands-on, embodied knowledge, a ritual of measurement as sacred as it was practical. What is truly staggering is the endurance of this tradition. For 3,000 years, from the earliest dynastic towns to the last great pharaonic capitals, Egyptian urban planners adhered to the same core principles. The consistent orientation to the cardinal directions, the integration of solar alignments into major avenues, the understanding that a city should be a reflection of cosmic balance. This knowledge was passed down through an unbroken chain of architects and scribes. It was a cultural constant, as fundamental to their identity as their hieroglyphs or their belief in the afterlife. This persistence hints at a worldview where the distinction between the practical and the spiritual did not exist. A well-aligned street was not just easy to navigate. It was a thread connecting the community to the eternal, unchanging rhythm of the cosmos. How did they maintain this clarity of vision across centuries of political upheaval and foreign influence? The answer lies in a culture that measured its stability not by the wealth of its pharaohs, but by its alignment with the silent, turning heavens. A perfect star fortress rises from the Venetian plain, its geometry so precise it feels more like a diagram than a dwelling place. This is Pomonova, a city conceived in the late 16th century as the ultimate fusion of Renaissance reason and military might. Its planners, armed with compasses and protractors, did not follow the lay of the land. They imposed a 9-pointed star upon it, a shape born from the new mathematics of ballistics, where every bastion provided a clear line of fire to protect its neighbor. 3 concentric rings of formidable earthworks and moats defended a radial street plan of absolute symmetry. 6 main avenues and 9 radial streets all converged like spokes on a wheel, leading directly to the hexagonal central piazza. Every street, every block, every angle was calculated to an exacting standard of harmony and proportion. This was more than a fortress. It was a physical model of the Enlightenment mind, a belief that human society could be perfected through the application of pure geometry. The city was meant to be an egalitarian utopia. Each wedge-shaped residential sector offered identical access to the central square, the city walls, and its resources. There were to be no privileged districts, no back alleys of poverty. The design itself would enforce a new social order of equality and shared civic duty. Yet, for all its mathematical brilliance, the city remained hauntingly empty. The Venetian government, baffled by the lack of volunteers for this perfect society, was eventually forced to pardon criminals and offer them free homes just to populate the streets. Why did this masterpiece of logic fail to capture the human heart? The very perfection that defined its design was its greatest flaw. The rigid, repetitive layout offered no surprises, no intimate corners, no organic growth. It was a city without a history, without the messy, layered character that grows from centuries of unplanned life. The geometric plan, for all its defensive strength and rational beauty, ignored the fundamental human need for complexity, for accident, for soul. What does this grand Renaissance experiment teach us? That a city is not a theorem to be solved, but a living organism. The silent, geometric streets of Pomonova stand as a permanent monument to a beautiful, flawed idea, a warning that the most perfect plan is worthless if it forgets the people it was meant to serve. These ancestral Puebloan architects did not fight the cliffs, they befriended them. The great cliff palaces of Mesa Verde are not structures placed in the landscape. They are the landscape itself, reimagined as shelter. Builders used the existing contours of the canyon alcoves as their foundational blueprint, fitting stone and mortar walls seamlessly against the curving sandstone, making it impossible to tell where nature's work ended and human craft began. This was architecture of profound harmony, a dialogue with the earth that yielded homes cooled by the stone at their backs and warmed by the sun on their faces. Their planners possessed an intimate, almost cellular understanding of the local microclimate. They oriented entire villages to face the south, capturing the low, warming rays of the winter sun to heat the dwelling spaces. Then, as the sun climbed high in the summer sky, the massive stone overhangs above would cast a cooling shadow, creating a natural, passive air conditioning system that required no energy beyond its perfect placement. Every element was designed for resource efficiency. They used timber from the canyon rim, sandstone blocks quarried on site, and a mud mortar that blended perfectly with the surrounding rock. With these simple, local materials, they engineered astonishingly stable multi-story structures, with kivas, storage rooms, and living quarters stacked precariously yet securely beneath the sheltering cliffs. Their most vital innovation, however, was their mastery of water. In this high desert, every drop of rain was a treasure. They engineered a sophisticated collection system, carving channels into the cliff faces above their dwellings to capture runoff from the mesa top. This precious water was then funneled into carefully plastered reservoirs and storage pits, providing a lifeline through seasons of drought. What kind of deep, observational science allowed these planners to read the land with such precision? They understood solar angles, seasonal wind patterns, and the hydrology of sandstone in a way that feels almost instinctual. This knowledge enabled a thriving society to flourish in a place that seems, to our eyes, inherently hostile. So why did they eventually walk away from these perfectly adapted homes? The answer remains etched into the silent stone, a permanent lesson in building with the land, not just on it. In an age of climate crisis, their sustainable design principles, born from necessity and a deep reverence for their environment, are not just ancient history. They are a blueprint for our future, waiting for us to rediscover its wisdom. These silent stone puzzles, scattered across continents and centuries, all whisper a similar, humbling truth. The linear story of human progress, that steady climb from primitive to advanced, begins to crumble when you stand before a city that mastered seismic engineering 1,000 years ago, or one that built a perfect water system without a written manual. The pattern is undeniable. These mysterious architects were not merely ahead of their time, they were operating on a different axis of thought entirely. Their advancements were not technological in the way we define them, with complex machinery and digital code. Instead, they achieved a profound synthesis, blending an intuitive understanding of geology with celestial mathematics, or weaving spiritual cosmology into the very bricks of their sanitation systems. They prove that a society can be staggeringly advanced without ever industrializing, that the peak of human knowledge can manifest as a perfect harmony with the natural world rather than its domination. This forces us to expand our very definition of what it means to be an advanced civilization. Is it the power to reshape a planet, or the wisdom to build a city that thrives for millennia without breaking it? The legacy of these planners is not just in the stones they left behind, but in the gap they reveal in our own understanding. We have spent centuries perfecting our way of knowing, one built on empirical data and mechanical innovation. But these cities suggest there are other ways of knowing, entire systems of knowledge rooted in deep observation, oral tradition, and a worldview where the practical and the sacred were inseparable. This lost intelligence was not necessarily written down in manuals, but lived in the hands of the stonemason and the eyes of the star watcher. Decoding their urban legacies, therefore, is about more than archaeology. It is an exercise in rediscovering the full spectrum of human creativity. It asks us to look beyond our own assumptions and consider that the most sophisticated solution to a problem might not be the most complex piece of machinery, but the most elegant alignment with the forces of nature. Perhaps the greatest lesson these master builders leave for us is one of profound humility. Their silent, enduring cities remind us that our current technological zenith is just one point on a vast and varied map of human achievement, and that many of the paths to true wisdom remain, for now, beautifully undecoded.